Jim Joyce, happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday, my friend. How's it going? What's the buzz?
The buzz is the garage door that you can see over there, right? I'm back to where this all started when the bad word hit last April, March, right, in US. So
It's
back
full
here,
circle, baby. Full circle.
it is just for the summer, kind of settle in here a bit.
Yeah.
And the amazing part is I landed here Friday. Saturday I already had an appointment for the Pfizer vaccine. And the crazy part is that they were already in the CVSs, they're winding down. They're taking down stations already, right? So I guess to the extent that everybody who wanted to be vaccinated basically has gotten there, right? Minus the age group. So it's kind of crazy, man. But happy to be here.
They're not soliciting people to I heard that. I thought they'd be kind of trying to promote it and trying to make it almost easier and make it more drop-in.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I'm to be honest, I'm not watching it. I think there are many campaigns going on, but in general, right, the droves of people that we're expecting. So yeah, so we went to a couple. But one other thing on that, the fact that I'm here now, the daytime drinking on Wednesday starts again. So that's just yeah. What else? Bittersweet. My cheating on you with another podcast has officially ended. The limited series has ended, and there's just so many more people that I have not spoken to around the digital therapeutics topic. So decided, spoke to our friends at Health Excel and decided that we'll continue these conversations live at their DTX community. So healthexcel.com/DTX, people. Check it out, join members.
I heard I listened to the last one with Brian Dolan. I thought it was great. And Jess Tomasa came in. I thought that
that's right.
Coming in. So I thought that was excellent. I really enjoyed it. He's a little he's so practical, Brian Dolan, isn't he? He's just so just like boom, 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 just practical.
Straight to the point.
Yeah, I'm a little more optimistic, maybe, that it's going to break through. But I'm a little more optimistic,
I'm optimistic, and we'll bring in our next guest. Actually, we'll talk a little bit because then I'll. But anyway, I'm optimistic, but I do agree with him that I don't see, pick a random 5 billion mass drug, right? I just don't see that for a DTX.
Right. But. Just as you're bringing in our guests, so I have a little we don't do commercials that much, but for Health Beacon. So we, as you know, Health Beacon, we manage people on injectable medications, and one of the big issues is that in the U.S. something like 7 billion injections get thrown, or sharps get thrown into household trash every year, creating a big sustainability environmental issue. So we've teamed up with this with a number of organizations, and joined a nonprofit called Alliance to Zero. So we might just put it in the show notes, and we're teaming up with really big companies like Ypsomed and Sharps and a number of other. So we're one of the founding members. So just a little Alliance to Zero call out.
No, I mean, I think today we started off with, pimping the podcast, then Health Excel. I don't have anything to report on your coach because our waiting list is actually pretty good at the moment. But if you're listening, join the waiting list if you're a progressive employer. So that's it.
Awesome.
All right. The commercial messaging is done. Let's get our awesome. So we're gonna let in Mr. Keith Grimes into the room.
Hello.
Hey.
Oh man, I'm jealous of your hair too, Keith.
Hey, Keith.
Hi, Jim, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, Jim.
So you guys haven't met on through Health Excel or something? Because all the roads lead to either Health 2.0, Health Excel. I don't know.
I've definitely met your kind of aura, Keith. Your reputation that precedes you.
Well, that's nice. Yeah, I mean, I've done a fair few Health Excel things. In fact, funnily enough, earlier on today, there's an event coming up talking about primary care that I'm not able to attend, but they've really stepped up the amount of events they're doing at the moment, and they're always They're always very high. I always come away with an awful lot more than I brought in, which is great. So.
That's awesome. I think the hashtag is their non-events kind of thing.
Yeah,
or something like
I mean,
that. But we'll check with Marty. They're not your typical. They're not a webinar, even though.
They're like, I wouldn't say non-event because that makes it sound like they're not good.
No,
but they're kind of. Yeah, they're not your typical event. Yeah, they're
an unevent.
Yeah, unevent would be better. Yeah.
So Keith, before we go into your introduction to our millions of viewers and listeners, it sparked my. We had Chris Haag on last week, and Maarten de Braber sort of commented, right, and that kind of just sparked that you and I met because of Maarten, actually in good old Amsterdam in Vondel Park. I remember this, and you were one of those, I guess, must have been like almost 10 years ago or 8 years ago, something like that. One of those like
August.
What is it?
August 25th, 2014 was the tweet that I put out, and it was actually Maneesh Juneja that said, "Oh my good," he was like, my good friend Eugen lives in Amsterdam. So it was courtesy of Maneesh. But yes, I did see Maarten van Braber as well, because that was a kind of fast follow. They said, "Oh, this person's also very interesting." Yeah. Okay.
So we should celebrate our anniversary on August 25th this year. We'll do that, but
done it every year since. Every year.
I just remember, and again, I do want to listen. I just remember the one statement you made as I would say, a progressive GP, right? Is I think at the time was the Basis watch, right? So I thought one of more advanced watches at the time, and I remember the use case you used is for a patient that reported no sleep, but in combination, you saw more than enough sleep for that day, so digging in. So that's my introduction of Keith and how we met. But maybe just for our audience, do your own introduction, because I can't do it as well as you can.
Yeah, sure. All right. Okay. Well, hello everyone. My name's Keith Grimes. I am a general practitioner. I am a geek. I am a gamer, and I am a giant. So I'm 4G. I've got to find the 5th G to get up to this as well. I'm a general practitioner or a family practitioner by the US parlance. I've been that since 2000, and I still do clinical sessions. But I've been a geek way longer than that. I've always wanted to be involved in technology, and went to medical school trying to find my way into it back in 1990. And it's been a long time coming to get to this particular point. And there's still work to do. But I love technology, and I love using technology to solve healthcare problems. It's like it's the thing that's really driven me all the way through. Opportunities sometimes haven't always been there, but there's something spectacular about like the kind of problem space that healthcare provides, and all the technology. Bringing the two together is great. I always describe it. It's a bit like if you like puzzles, like Sudoku or something, and like healthcare is like the biggest, fattest book of puzzles you could ever get. So and I've that's my basic introduction of who I am. I currently work as clinical digital health and innovation director at Babylon Health. Babylon Health, London headquartered, but actually our headquarter is now in the cloud like everyone else. We operate globally, telemedicine digital health company operating in the UK and APAC, America, and growing every day. So yeah, I'm having a nice time of it now.
Awesome. I don't know where you want to go, Jim. I have when Keith said the basic introduction, right? There's just so much to unpack there. But maybe we touch on, because we actually talked a little bit about that last week too, the quantified self, right? It started as a movement, and interestingly enough, just weirdly today on LinkedIn, I don't know if you guys know Heal Capital out of Berlin. Eckhart Weber is one of the partners. They actually published a whole piece on quantified self, like literally, I think, in the last couple of days. So it just kind of screamed. So it's coming into practice, and it's probably no longer called quantified self to a certain extent. But maybe Keith, just back up your original thinking about using something like the Basis watch in your regular practice. Like, what took you there?
So it's interesting, and actually, when I remember when I met you back in Amsterdam, and particularly Maarten as well, because Maarten was very much into that, and I think Maarten had got he'd implanted a small sliver of metal into his finger or something, I think I'm
That's
right.
me too. I think Maarten did it too.
I
think Maarten did it too. I have the RFID chip. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think the
NFC technically.
was, so part of it was RFID, but part of it was also being able to develop the ability to be able to sense magnetic fields and electromagnetic radiation as well. I haven't taken that.
I don't have that one.
No.
I'm sorry.
But meeting you in that time actually put a name to something that I'd been aware of for a while. And I think the MyBasis watch no longer around. I think they had some problems with the watch actually causing, burns for people, like a second version of it. It was IBM's one. But I remember getting it because it had quite a lot of sensors put on it. When I started out in general practice and I wanted to use technology with what I did, when you start out, you're always waiting for someone to say what you can and can't do. And then as time goes on, you realize that that's not coming and you get more confident and you actually start to, within the bounds of what's appropriate and safe, like start using the things around you. And just because I was into technology, I'd do the same. I'd have all these other gadgets and try and find it. I think initially it was mostly things like building wikis for information and so on, and practice websites and trying to build apps. But when it came to the watches, I remember one of the things that I was interested in with the MyBasis watches, they actually track things like skin temperature, if I remember rightly, skin resistivity, so it could give you a kind of stress metric, had quite a nice platform, but it also tracked sleep. That was the thing that I was interested in. And in this particular, and I remember the patient very well. He's the poor gentleman's passed on now, but he gave me his golf umbrella as a present. I still use his golf umbrella. Anyway, he just very briefly, this man's story was that he was a palliative care patient. He had cancer and he was in the sort of final stages of his illness, and he was requiring pain relief to help with his pain and sleeping medications. And that's absolutely fine, in that particular phase. But if you use too high a dose, it can come with problems and make people unsteady. And he wasn't sleeping at night and he was asking for more and more medicine. And I actually had this device and I spoke to him and said, should we try it? Shall we see what your sleep's like? And then we can come back and talk about it and work it out. And I went to his house, put the watch on, went away, and then came back the next day and we looked at the data together. And what was really interesting about it is that I asked him what his night had been like, and he said, "Oh, it was quite broken. I was up at 2 a.m. and then 4 a.m. and I'm still not sleeping very well, and it's causing me worry because I want to be able to get some sleep." But I was able to show him the overnight passage, and it had a couple of breaks in his sleep. But it also showed that through the day, he had been napping quite a lot. Now that's fine. He was an older man with quite serious health problems. But what I was able to do is say, well, look, there's only a finite amount of sleep that a person's really going to need throughout a day. And if you're having this through the day, you're going to be less likely to need it at night. That you're not sleeping at night in and of itself isn't a bad thing. Like, I know it's, you may not like it, it's not a bad thing. But actually that was enough for him to settle him to realize that he was getting enough sleep. I mean, he was still up, but it stopped him escalating that dose of medicine, which in turn, I believe, may have contributed towards him safely staying at home for longer. And it was something just as simple as me being able to use that to make a difference for this patient that convinced me that the quantified, what quantified self movement had done, tools that it was beginning to give to consumers, absolutely had a role to play to help people.
It just building off of that, Keith, and you just came out of a meeting with the good folks from Health Excel. When you met Eugene 10 years ago, and as a primary care physician or trained as that, where are they right now? I feel like when I visit my parents in Florida, I'm based in Dublin, but I visit my parents in Florida, they say, oh, old people don't adopt technology, but I just see technology everywhere in their lives, managing their health, even though they're not very technically. Where's the primary care physician right now in terms of adopting some of these things, even practical, versus 10 years ago?
So in terms of wearable devices, they're still quite a long way off. What's happened, so I'll talk about the UK perspective and then maybe reflect on what's happening in different places. But in the UK, like every other country in the world affected by the pandemic, there was a sudden need to see people remotely. And that principally manifests as people having video consultations or remote consultations and moving towards a kind of total triage model to minimize the number of people that you saw face-to-face to only those that really needed to be seen. So that's fine. That's gone through. And in fact, telemedicine is well adopted. We're actually having a bit of a pushback right now in the UK because people, like clinicians, feel like they want to be able to physically see the patient, but demand is very high. And there's a suggestion that they worry that digital has opened the floodgates, which I don't think is true. That aside, along the way, there was also the need to be able to monitor people remotely as well, particularly with COVID. And so there was a relatively substantial uptake of the use of oxygen saturation monitors at home. You're celebrating here in the background. Yeah. Oh, is this the?
Yeah, this is the C19, technically C19 free zone, but I think we kind of gave up on this.
All right. Well, look, that being this, I'll try and avoid referring to that. But what it did do is that it built some experience about safely monitoring people remotely. And so general practitioners in the UK associated with their local health commissioners have been distributing oxygen saturation monitors to help facilitate people staying at home. And I think that has been more widely adopted. It's still not entirely common, but it is more widely adopted. That said, I think the reason that people adopted it is because these are oxygen saturation monitors. These are medical devices, and therefore we're giving people medical devices.
Right.
We're not seeing the same amount of faith placed in wearable devices like your Apple Watch or other smart watches that have oxygen saturation monitors built into them. Now, why should they? They're not medical devices right now, so there's maybe some, question about whether they're as accurate as the medical ones as well. But I don't think that the general practice in the UK is stepping into this like beyond what they absolutely have to do right now. I think some barriers have come down through positive experience. The AliveCor device is another really good example of a device that's actually quite widely used in some places here in the UK. I've had some personal.
They just acquired a service company, right? Cardio. Literally, I just saw this earlier.
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Well,
so congrats to the team there.
Yeah. Well, it's Dave Albert, isn't it? The genial genius.
So the GP. So when you think about it, like if you were practicing in there, you would be, trying to get people on, step counts and other monitoring and sleep tracking, and that would give you kind of an insight, like you had in that fellow. You were able to say, hey, you're sleeping enough during the day. Let's lower the anxiety here. Let's not step you up medically. But they're not, so COVID, blood ox, pulse ox, whatever, tracking, telemedicine there, but not much else. Like, are some people are adopting it?
No, I'm not observing that. I mean, there are some areas where people, in some ways, it hasn't moved on that much. There's a lot of things that have to land to motivate people to make a change in this one. It's not just about having the devices out there, like consumer devices. Let's say a consumer device gets medically certified. That is not going to be enough. It then has to speak with the electronic health records of the systems that the GPs use. In the UK, we've essentially got a duopoly of those between EMIS and System 1. I think they do some integration of some data just now, but it's not there. Then they have to be paid to do it. Then they have to feel that they're adequately trained to interpret it. Then they're going to ask to see that there's medical evidence that this particular metric that's being reported using this particular device for this particular condition makes a difference in outcomes. So there's still quite a lot in the way of widespread adoptions. And some of it I think is unreasonable because we could be making a difference right now for people.
Right. And if you look at what's going on in all the enthusiasm around digital health, largely what you talked about before, this adoption, it's like, it feels like people are betting on that adoption really shifting, right? Like people are saying, like, if they feel like they're betting it on shifting over the next 24 or 36 months, and it's not like 10 years from now,
Yeah, well, I think it's I'm obviously going to say this, but I think it's a reasonable bet to be betting on parts of that. There are some that actually what's kind of happening. It's not so much that consumer devices are getting better, but it's like the medical devices are getting cheaper and more capable as well. And I think that's probably the bit that's going to crack it. So when you look at a good example is diabetes, and you look at companies
CGMs,
like CGMs and all that kind of thing, like an integrated device. Particularly for patient acceptance, if a healthcare professional says, I'm your healthcare professional, and to help with your care, I want you to use this. They kind of give you a box or whatever it is. A lot more trust in that. Generally, the reason the clinician's doing that is it's integrated with their system as well. And then you get this kind of virtuous cycle where the clinician trusts it, the patient therefore trusts it, they collect the data, the healthcare professional then trust in the data, and so on and so forth. So when you close that loop, then yes, I think it's right to be betting on that. And diabetes is a classic example, but hypertension another area as well. We're looking at people doing similar things for sleep disorders, obstructive sleep apnea. You know, those are the kind of the tip of the wedge.
Do you ever see, I mean, you know, obviously a lot of these, what you mentioned, like the Abbott, right? I actually just reordered, now that I'm here in US again, the Levels Health, right? Which integrates the Abbott device, but it's for metabolic health. This is not a treatment. This is more for,
Understood,
you know,
yeah.
not that I'm an athlete, but I think a lot of these, to your point, it's actually an interesting statement, right? The medical devices are getting smaller, probably more affordable, yet it's still not there. And do you ever see, though, that, I don't know, just, I mean, we're geeks, right, to a certain extent, and we're looking at this space, but do you see that the general population will be using, in a preventative mode, a lot of these sensors, devices, and all of that? I don't know. I would love to see it, but I'm a bit skeptical still on it.
Yeah, well, I think I mean I've used the Abbott, the Freestyle Libre myself. When we talked about this, I gave it a go, and I found it incredible. I am, fortunately, I am not diabetic. I don't have diabetes. I'm not pre-diabetic. I am metabolically set up to it. You know, I've got fatty liver. I come from a family that does this. So, you know, but I found it incredible being able to become aware of things that I was not aware of before. And I used it for a couple of weeks, and I sort of focused on the impact that food had on my glucose levels, and learned some rather surprising things, in particular about what breakfast cereal does to your blood sugar. That's for sure. And then the second thing was the impact that fat did on terms of absorption. I remember that being really interesting, like the difference between, you know, having a lot of butter or cream on a scone versus a scone on its own. All those kind of things that I'm sure patients who have diabetes understand well. Anyway, off the back of that, I think that I say to anyone that will listen to me about this, the advent of consumer devices which will track your blood glucose in some way will make step counts seem like absolutely nothing. It was absolutely going to transform things, is my feeling. In part because of the impact that short period of time with the device had on me and the things that I did afterwards. And I can't say that happened with step counts. And I've seen it happen to more than one person as well. So I think blood glucose is going to be a big thing. When I speak to some people about it, they also say it'll also be the opportunity that people will start divesting themselves of cereal producing shares and things like that, because people will all of a sudden become aware of stuff.
Did you maintain the Freestyle Libre, or did you just use it to kind of understand and then back away from it?
I used it a couple of times. I used it for about a month in total, and I haven't used it again since, in part just because I'd have to shell out a certain amount of money to get it, and it wasn't at the top of my mind right now. I remember doing it for a period of time, then making some changes to my diet and seeing the impact that it made. And then I got some tantalizing insights into how my activity, the type of activity that I did, translated to what my blood glucose was like over subsequent days. Like, for example, if I went out and did like a long walk, it would, you know, control things. But if I went out and did some high intensity exercise, even a short period, that actually reduced things for a couple of days. Yeah. Well, no. Well, I mean, there were some changes around about the time, but the couple of days afterwards, my profile was better. And I think actually what you just said, there's also interesting that there's going to be a lot of personal variation, isn't there?
Yep.
So we're going to have to work with people to try and help them understand, because otherwise they're going to get this flood of data. No idea.
I'll report back next Wednesday. Hopefully my levels kit arrives in the next couple of days, what this does to me. So live on this recording next week.
But isn't that you guys are big long-term quantified self guys. Isn't that the little bit the curse of the quantified self, meaning like you get the data, you get the insight, you figure out what 10,000 steps is, you figure out what and then you abandon the technique that gave you the insight. So that the business model of the person providing you the services support isn't maintained, so it's like, isn't that the curse a bit?
But I'll tell you, and this is why my 2 cents on it, Keith, but I'd love it. I think Levels Health, as an example, they also have human beings around it, right? Because to me, the technology itself, whatever this is, right, we can quantify the heck out of it. you kind of know what your body does, but at the end of this is about behavior change. And you know, personally, when I got the CGM originally, I was racing myself. I was accountable to this little device, right? I was not accountable to Marina, my health coach. I was not, but I was accountable to this device. But as soon as that came off, I'm like, oh, nobody's watching me, right? And nobody's still me. So I think again, what are the triggers? And this is why we're seeing actually a lot of the services surrounding themselves with health coaches and other, you know, behavior change agents. And this actually gets me a little bit, Keith, into the discussion, because, you know, we've seen, sort of switching gears a little bit, on chatbots, right? Like we've seen for many years, chatbots. You kind of don't even hear about that anymore, right? And if I even look at Babylon in US, for example, you know, companies acquiring practices, right? Or you know, I'll say the supply side of people that can help you outside of the tech, right? Yeah. So a lot said, but let's just talk about technology versus / with humanity, right? And human beings helping you.
Yeah, I think the truth of it is there's still a way to go. You know, I think if a person turned around and thought, if you think that a chatbot will replace the entirety of what a human healthcare provider can do, then you're going to be proved wrong very quickly. And that's as true for the best chatbots as different chatbots around the way, because the healthcare and wellness, the sort of, you know, the health and wellness side of things, requires a lot of different activities. And a chatbot is essentially that sort of conversational interface in front of a particular automated tool. So that automated tool could be a symptom checker, for example. And you know, symptom checkers perform an important function in terms of triage, indicating where a person needs to go, and maybe giving them some information about what the cause of the symptoms might be. But that's actually just one part of a person's care. You know, why doctors, when we, you know, people talk about symptom checkers and they're saying, oh, they're going to replace the doctors and nurses will chuckle, because they realize that just the diagnosis part is kind of in some ways almost the smallest part of what they do, or the triage part is just the smallest part. Like many things, you know, people get very excited about the potential of what's happening, but then the reality of exactly what they can do, and they can do fantastic things, but in certain narrow areas, people then, their eye shifts to the next magic bullet, whatever that might be. But what's happening for companies like Babylon and other providers as well is that you're slowly building out this toolkit. And this toolkit is starting to do more and more. And the interfaces are becoming a little bit more sensitive as to which tool to use at which time. And people are becoming more comfortable with using it. It's being more integrated with the services as well. So it's just going to take some time. And in the meantime, you want to be able to make sure that you're providing care for patients. Care for patients requires, you know, human faces for the most part.
The chatbot's interesting because I think about this idea of like automatic reply, and whenever I interact with that, and it's like, you know, we've had this whole kind of audio, you know, like I talk to my Alexa, I get information back out of it. I could very easily get health information, you know, I could ask simple questions. And Alexa has earned its place in my home because maybe it gives us news or the weather or some music. And then as a result
or the walk-in Jim Joyce song before you arrive into the house. That's right.
Yeah, welcome home, Master.
Every night I have it play entrance music as I enter my house. So that's the essential infrastructure that applies in my house.
But I think the thing about speech interfaces or digital voice assistants is that I think the experience that we've had, and also a lot of people are having, is that people don't want long conversations with a digital voice assistant because a digital voice assistant casts a spell that allows you to get so far. As in, I can cognitively deal with having a halting conversation at loud volume with a device for a short period of time to get us, like, change a radio station, turn a light on or off, something like that. But that breaks down pretty quickly when you're having a kind of question.
I said Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah. Exactly. So so I think people, you know, whilst you can technically build an interface using a digital voice assistant, it's kind of its current setup is difficult to navigate. So people won't use it for that, but they'll use it for timers and food. Like I use mine for like the radio or converting weights for recipes and stuff like that, you know.
Right. But yeah, so I mean, it's kind of interesting how like those things like that chatbot idea of kind of like having, or, you go on, like the way Google interjects it in, your text communication, or they're kind of just dealing with it, or scheduling, or, the kind of map interfaces. And then it's almost like sneaking it in, so it feels like almost like chatbot's place might not be in a healthcare application, but might be in your general, the general infrastructure of how you're interacting with it, like it's kind of, kind of seamlessly working away or something like that. Like
it's like any of these communication modalities, it's not all or nothing, it's the right one at the right time. And so sometimes the voice interface is going to be useful. Sometimes using like being able to type and send messages is the use thing. I mean, I always use the example is that chatbots are fantastic for sexual health, because people really hate saying things that are personal out loud. So a chatbot where you write your sexual health thing, absolutely fine. Can you imagine having that conversation out loud in your kitchen with Alexa, shouting what you've been up to? Wouldn't work. So different modalities for different things.
Have you tried?
Yeah, all kinds of bad jokes kind of came to the top of my head that I won't get on here. But I don't want to upgrade our YouTube listing.
I was going to say we're staying PG on this one, otherwise we'd need.
But okay, so you're a GP and then you're a gamer, right? You said you're a gamer and you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So talk to us about that. Like, how are you applying that?
So I mean, being a gamer is just it's like I enjoy board games. I enjoy computer games. I've enjoyed them all my life. I'm now just essentially unapologetic about it, because it was never a thing that you would really talk about it. And the fact is that it's not the geeks will inherit the earth. They won. Like, we have won. We've won. like everyone plays computer games. Everyone plays board games. It happens. Anyhow, still do it. Still love it. And it's part of something that I do to maintain my wellness and got me out of depression in the past. All these things. But the good thing about games is that they introduce you to excellent technology for a start. And so for a person that's interested in technology, games in particular kind of push the boundaries. They push the boundaries of what's possible with graphics and sound and narrative and storytelling, realization of space, devices as well. And so I've got my VR headset just there as well. And that was actually, it was my interest in VR, which was peaked back in the early 90s. VR wasn't very first, but it was big for the first time and disappointing for the first time. Went away, and then when it came back and it was much better, in the early sort of teens, about 2012 or so on, I invested in that very, very rapidly. But because I wanted to play games with it, I just wanted to do that sort of thing. But I rapidly realized that VR had a place in healthcare. And it was in my own practice that I was able to, in the same way that I did with my patient with the watch, I was able to speak with my patients and look at how we could use VR to help them with some of the problems that they had. And in the case for me, it was using virtual reality for reduction of pain in patients was really eye-opening.
And also for injections. I remember you were telling me something about either drawing blood or injections, where people just are much more calm. And I remember, those were some of the initial use cases. I remember visiting Brennan Spiegel, which I think they're trying to
they're trying to get that back up and running. The physical conference. They have Brennan Spiegel is a gastroenterologist and technologist working at Cedars-Sinai. Recently written his book VRX, which is a phenomenal and good tour of the area for those who want to read up afterwards. Anyway, he started this virtual medicine conference in LA back this last year would have been year 4, so a few years back, and I went across and spoke at it a couple of times. So it was very, very fortunate to be there. But anyway, that which will not be named got away, and I think he's trying to get it up and running again for a face-to-face next year. But you're right, yes, he's been using it for treatment of acute pain for his patients. And I used it for patients that were anxious about having practical procedures like blood tests or joint injections, things that I would do with my own practice. But the thing that was the most impact was people who had assistance with wound care, either burns or surgical care, when you change painful. And there's a lot of good evidence of using VR for burns patients, of course. But burns patients are a slightly special case because you can potentially use very strong analgesia. when you're working in primary care, you don't really get that chance. People coming in and out very quickly. So something you can deploy fast. And that's exactly what I did. And it transformed the experience of patients that were using it, for the most part.
Where is VR at right now? I mean, do you guys know, where is VR at? Is it, is money being thrown into it? Is there tech I'm not aware of that's transforming?
Yeah, I mean, that statement in and of itself is telling. I think, the evidence, like the use cases for virtual reality and extended reality more broadly, I think are there. The evidence base is increasingly there, but the funding for it isn't there right now. The way people can get reimbursed for the use of it isn't clearly there at the moment. So, we saw a transformation for telehealth, particularly in the US, with the changing of reimbursement for that, drove the uptake. That's fine. You need something like that, I think, for virtual reality. And how you get to that, well, that's the $1 question. I don't know.
Maybe I'll just add to that, right? Because I think probably in the last month and a half or so, AppliedVR, which I know they started more as a platform for other players, now focused on pain. I think they raised 29 or 30 million, something like that. I know I just met with Xavier from Psious. They're right here in Barcelona.
Oh, Psious, yeah.
Yeah, so lots of, I'll say phobia reductions and pain. And there's, to your point, there's a lot of evidence coming, and they're hitting the, the psychiatry and psychology market, right? And so they're very much of a long tail. And interestingly enough, I think as people did go remote quite a bit, that I think helped some of those use cases. Also, the one that I'm interested, because I just finished over talking about the digital therapeutic. I mean, I actually do look from a neurodegenerative component, the stimulation through VR can actually be almost like a drug, right? So I think it's a spectrum of things on, is it in the office or at home? Because not everybody has it at home. Is it for pain management or a particular therapeutic area, and where are the use cases? I think there's some flying high and some just sort of died out, right?
Yeah, and there's actually, I mean, I want to mention Sarah Tycho and Ross O'Brien. In the UK, there's a publication called The Growing Value of XR in Healthcare that I'd commend people to read, because there's a number of different reasons for it. This is about growing the healthcare XR market and economy in the UK as well. The first thing to say is that it's got as many use cases and case studies as you like. So if you want to learn about the breadth of what can be achieved with XR, extended reality, just for those who don't know, is virtual reality, that fully immersive side of things, augmented reality where things are laid on top of it, and mixed reality where it all interacts. So XR is this great report, loads of case studies in there about success, small scale successes that are growing in the UK and internationally that you can look at. And they make 3 recommendations at the end of it. The first is that they want to map out XR in healthcare in the UK. They want to try and get a good view of what's going on, and then establish centers of excellence. So standardizing research and development, developing playbooks, looking at testing, regulatory, safety, procurement, distribution, and reimbursement, all of that work being done collectively to try and help give everyone a foot up, because there's often quite small players in this particular area. And then really excitingly, connecting the XR industry, which is growing, those people working in gaming and creative spaces, and healthcare. And it's one of the reasons that I really love XR and VR, is because you bring in the creatives, and the world of creatives and artists have so much to give for this as well. XR is an interesting one because it's also got problems in that you have devices. You got Eugene's just been attacked by some.
That's the beauty of being back in the New Jersey garage. There was like this huge, I don't know what the hell.
I just sent in an extended reality bug.
I was gonna say maybe that's what.
That's it. Yeah, Eugene. Neither of us saw anything. So coming back to it, for delivering it, actually, you need 3 things. You need the hardware, you need the software, and you need the content. So for a digital therapeutic with XR, you need those 3 things to be working. Hardware devices that are, do you need a medically certified device to be able to deliver this or not? Yes or no. The software as a medical device, we know that's an interesting area. But then, of course, you've got the content. The reality that you're creating is separate to the software it as well. So to get it working requires a few balls to be juggled.
Right.
But it's worth it because interesting stuff happening.
It also feels like we had Frederick on from My Sugar. He talked about the sloth, whatever you say, like that, never underestimate the fundamental laziness in people, in time, it's kind of adopting things at scale. Yeah. That was a summarized version of what he said, but the deadly sins, I think he described it, that, this idea, because I think about augmented reality, like some of the virtual reality, augmented reality, every experience I've had from some intelligent application, or we've even tried it at Health Beacon here, it's just blown me away. Like, it's just phenomenal. But I undoubtedly get stuck in the scaling, the hardware, the kind of how do you wire it in a way that works reliably and consistently, and can onboard people maybe that aren't as convinced as me.
There's there have been some successes. So a friend of mine, Farhan Amin, who's a general practitioner in the west of England, has a company that produces pulmonary rehabilitation in virtual reality. It's called PR and VR, and it allows people to do pulmonary rehab in their own homes. Pulmonary rehab is physical therapy for your lungs, essentially, that has a really evidence base showing it reduces hospital admissions. In fact, it's pretty much the only intervention that reduces hospital admissions. Forget your drugs, anything else. Pulmonary rehab is the way to go for COPD. Of course, we've got people with COVID. Well, sorry, but that too. Anyway, but there's long waiting lists often, and it's difficult for people with COPD to travel to the place to get the rehab. And what Farhan has shown with his product is that you can deliver as effective pulmonary rehab to people using VR. They put the headset on and they follow this and they track it, and it can be adjusted according to oxygen saturations. So far, so good. Then you think, well, yes, but these are people that aren't going to use it. Well, that's not true. He's found a way of just posting the kit out. It's got an integrated network card. It's already configured. The people just power it up and turn it on, and they'll do it. And these are people that are typically not expected to be technology users. This is being paid for in commissioning groups here in the United Kingdom in more than one place. But it has been an uphill struggle for him. I know that much. And he has to fight that fight every single time. That's hard. So we need to work to make this easier, but it can be done.
Right. Awesome. And in the gaming, like, are you applying gaming right now? Like, you sound like you are. Like, I heard something interesting. Someone was talking about this, people mistaking gamification for proper games or something like that. Or do you get on those kind of subjects?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, to me, computer games, the behavioral modification through the use of rewards, is, I think, what people are talking about when they're talking about gamification. Because, and you can have narrative added in there as well as a sort of measure. So there are some aspects that are the same as games, but principally when people talk about gamification, they're talking about some way a person can quantify their activity. So we're back to the quantified self, and then attach it to some sort of arbitrary, interesting reward. And it could be, cash money, or it could be just a new color on your screen, and then attach the two. And then find a way to link the desired activity to that particular reward. And then there are other methods that are used along the way to try and optimize how often you get the rewards and so on. So that's what we're talking about. And actually, it has a really important part to play in assisting positive behavioral modification for the purposes of, if the person's bought into it as well, to help them lose weight, maintain healthy lifestyle changes, adhere with medicational therapies as well. I think it has an important role to play. But equally, it has to be used with care, because it can be very effective. But you want to use it appropriately and ethically and with consent. You don't want to have the healthcare equivalent of loot boxes, where people are motivated in some way. So care has to be taken in employing it. But this is something that we, Babylon and other people are doing as well, as taking care over how you apply it. You need to make sure you work with behavioral scientists and so on. An interesting area, yeah.
So I'm usually the guy, right? And I don't know, Jim, if you we can keep unpacking, but I think I don't keep. Yeah, go for your famous question, man.
No, this is definitely so. Keith, so imagine yourself as a young primary care physician that wants to give up medicine and start his own digital healthcare company. You've got a big XR or VR or gaming health idea. What would be the advice that you would give that aspiring medic turned entrepreneur?
Learn product. It'd be the you know, like a lot of people will say, "Oh, learn how to code," or "Learn how to." No. Understand product design and development and delivery. Understand that bit, because that's the bit that if you are, as a clinician, you're the sort of subject matter expert. You understand the problem, and you have an idea what the solution is. No, you don't. Product teaches you how to work out the solution and deliver it in slices that work. Now, I've learned a lot being at Babylon. I was you know, that's the big change in my life since I left general practice. And the things that I've learned are mostly down to working with like amazing people that I wouldn't otherwise have met, like, you know, behavioral scientists, user researchers, data scientists, engineers, all that lot. But product, the way that you can step towards a solution to a problem has been one of the really foundational things. So I would say to that person, learn your product, and that will get you a long way. You can kind of partner up with everyone else, but learn your product.
Fantastic.
And then you pull in all these brilliant people to actually build the product, right? So.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, you know, I mean, and that's not to say that you can't have fantastic clinician coders, and that's fine. My own experience is that if you understand that bit, it takes you a lot further than the rest.
Awesome.
Well, on that note, thank you for joining us. Cheerios. And to the millions of people, keep subscribing to the YouTube and our podcast.
Like and subscribe.
Thanks, Keith.
Thanks.
Great.